I want to welcome everybody. This forum here is something that we really want to promote as being a conversation, a trusting environment where we can share ideas, we can share concerns about the use of generative AI in this particular topic tonight of research and writing. Let me switch to the next slide really quickly and show you. This is what's coming up in the series. Tonight is going to be research and writing in generative AI. The next topic we're going to address is generative AI tools, uses, and integration strategies. So although we'll talk about some products tonight and possibly demonstrate, or if someone wants to show something they're doing with a product, we're not going to focus explicitly on the detail of the tools, even though we might mention some. That's going to be a dedicated session that we do on February the 27th. So that's where we're going to delve into the tools. And then the third session is going to be strategies for adding generative AI into your education, into your curriculum, and your programs. And again, we'll share some tips and tricks that you have there to add in
Something went wrong. Please try again.
Whoops, sorry. Generative AI into your program or your specific courses. I can even share some things that I've done with prompting in the courses that I'm teaching right now. I teach in the EDD program here in the Lou Fulton Teachers College. And then the final, so that'll be the third session. And then we still have two more sessions after that. Again, each are repeated, and we are open to different ideas. So tonight we may get some new ideas from this group here. And as these series go on, we may add in some new topics, or we may come back and revisit an old topic. Depends on how that's going to go. We're open to new ideas. So that's kind of the schedule. Does anybody have any kind of comments or questions about the schedule of this series? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here now. That was just kind of the introduction there. I want to point out that this series is being kind of organized by and sponsored by the Learning Futures Collaborative that is working on artificial intelligence here in the college. It's a cross-disciplinary group of professors and students that we all collaborate on a bi-weekly basis and talk about generative AI and issues and ways that we can implement this within the college and beyond, and doing lots of research and things of that nature. I want to welcome kind of our fearless leader, Dr. Punya Mishra, who kind of spearheaded this organization long before ChatGPT came out, I might add. He's trying to be a little bit low profile tonight. We'll try to draw him out, which is not too difficult to do. And Dr. Janelle White-Taylor, who's a real significant member of our group as well. And I work a lot with Janelle and Punya on some initiatives. And then Jennifer Warner, who is, without Jennifer, I'm not sure how our group can stay organized with all the different resources she provides for us as a lead instructional designer here within the college. We are going to be sharing a number of different links throughout this session. So, but maybe if someone can put in the Learning Futures Collaborative is in there, which talks about all the different things that we are doing as a collaborative. It's a lot of speaking engagements, research papers, meeting with faculty. There's quite a bit that's going on within the Learning Futures Collaborative. And we're also looking at how can we bring generative AI into the college in a meaningful way. We're putting in for the university's proposals for how we can use generative AI in creative and new ways within the college. So we're all looking at this from different perspectives, oftentimes different parts of the college. And so it's very exciting to be a part of this group. I joined about, maybe 8 months ago when I talked to, I see Dr. Marsh is here. I said, who should I talk to? And she said, go talk to these guys. Go talk to Punya and the Learning Futures Collaborative. And it's changed my world ever since. I barely sleep since I've done that. So a great organization. The second thing I want to point out is a resource. And Jen, if you can drop that in the chat there, of the Generative AI My Education resource. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. I think it's that important to share. So if you get nothing else out of this discussion today, this is a great resource. So make sure you grab this and bookmark it. Of using AI in courses, talks about what is generative AI, different website resources, different tools, resources, and toolkits, how to use generative AI within your course, what we call assignment makeovers. And then down below, we've got academic integrity, There's the podcast that is available. You can listen to podcasts that talk about different uses of AI within our university and across universities. And then specifically AI and research, which we're talking about tonight, research and writing. There is IRB language you can use, integrity guidelines, research tools, and AI tools for academia, and then a bunch of frequently asked questions. So this is a really great resource for you. So grab this and bookmark it. We won't be able to cover everything tonight that's on this page, but we will cover that over the coming weeks, different aspects of that and resources that you can use. Generative AI is really, there's a lot to, some of you may be working with this a lot, some of it may be brand new to it, but there's a lot to uncover in terms of what these tools can do. I think on the surface, we hear about generative AI when it first came out as being, concerns about plagiarism, concerns about hallucination, those kinds of things. But as we've learned to use these tools, and as the tools have matured, we're finding really, really powerful use cases for students and faculty to use these tools to increase the ability for students to learn and for teachers to teach in new ways. So we're just beginning to really explore some of those ideas around generative AI. And speaking of conversation, I think I want to position this as a conversation. We're not here to promote any specific products, even though we might talk about a product or two. We're not here to say you must use this in your courses, or as a student, be really careful if you use it, it's going to be plagiarism, that kind of a thing. We really want to have an open conversation about the tools, how they can be useful, but also how we can, navigate this as a college. It's changing things quite frequently or quite rapidly within the higher education. I'm part of a group that is looking at AI within the doctoral programs of universities across the country with CPED, and we are uncovering all kinds of different universities that are using this in different ways, and it's very exciting. In fact, we have an upcoming issue that's dedicated to AI within the CPED framework. So those of you that are teaching in the EDD program, that's going to be a focused education, or rather the journal on AI. And we've already got I think 8 or 10 articles that have already come in for that. So lots of exciting use. But I want to make sure that this is a conversation among students and faculty of how can we support you with tools and ideas and ways that we can implement this with fidelity and keeping the academic integrity that we all care a lot about within the higher education institution. So with that, let me kind of first start with a very brief idea of where is generative AI now today. I think if we look back, a little more than a year ago when ChatGPT came out, that was ChatGPT 3.5, the very first version. We now have 4.0. We just had kind of one model to work with. And it was fairly, a little bit untrustworthy in the very beginning. It's gotten significantly better. And just recently this week, Google has announced their GenAI series, which takes the place of Bard. So we now have 2 LLMs, large language models, that are very viable for faculty and students to use. So we've got a maturing of the industry in a very short amount of time. I think what's changed the most dramatically is 2 things, or several things. First is generative AI used to be just modal. It would generate text for the most part when it first came out. Now it can generate text, it can generate audio, it can generate video, it can read images, it can interpret images, it can read documents, and we're going to talk about that today, and it can also write code. So the ability of a generative AI now is very multimodal, and in fact, they're being designed from scratch now to be multimodal. What does that mean for us? It means a lot of things. It means that now a student can use generative AI to actually read a document and extract all the important information out of that document without having read a single word. Okay, so let that soak in. They can find all the salient points from a document, a research article, without having read it. Now, there's good things about that, and there are some challenges about that in terms of critical thinking, et cetera, right? So those are some of the things we want to talk about. So if from that perspective, the tools are now very multimodal. It can do far more than they could before. So as we think about research and we think about writing, It's not just a matter of that you put in some text and it writes text for you, and you maybe use that in some way within a research report or a dissertation or something. It's now has the ability to do some of the work that you used to do in terms of finding gaps in literature, finding resources. It can now be employed to do that. Now, we may or may not want to do that, but it does have that capability right now. So students are exploring with these ideas. I just went to a talk a couple of weeks ago of 2 doctoral students at another university outside of ASU. They described in detail all the tools they were using, how they were being very transparent about that, and the results they were getting, both positive and negative. And it was really an eye-opening conversation with those students. That's what we're trying to encourage here as well. So we've got a variety of tools that can now do things that before you had to do essentially manually, can now be done by generative AI. And the question is, just because you can do it, should you do it? And how do we as professors, or how do we as students navigate this new landscape where you've got these powerful tools that at your disposal? And then the question becomes, what are the ethics? What are the ways that you can use these and still stay within the guidelines of academic integrity? I just watched a demonstration a couple of weeks ago of a product called Scopus, which many of you are familiar with at our ASU library. They have in beta now, the AI is built into Scopus, where it can go out and find leading researchers in areas. It can find gaps in literature, and it was absolutely astounding. And that's a tool that our library subscribes to, that I've taught with my students in some of my courses. And when that becomes available with AI built in, it's going to be really remarkable. The last thing I'm going to say, and I want to open up the floor here, is that we've thought of a generative AI before as being this kind of monolithic thing called ChatGPT that came out in November of 2022. But now it's being integrated pretty seamlessly across the platforms. Microsoft, if you saw in the Microsoft ad at the Super Bowl, advertising Copilot. Copilot is going to be the generative AI tool built into every single application and the operating system of the Microsoft platform. And Google will do the same thing with Gemini across their suite of applications. So what does that mean for us? It means that when you're writing a document, and let's say you're working on a research paper, a lit review, Copilot's going to be sitting there saying, do you want some help with this? How can I help you with this, right? So it's going to be embedded within the applications. It also means that if before, maybe if you didn't know much about creating graphs in Excel, you just tell Excel, I would like to create a bar chart with the data here, and I want you to use primary colors, and it's done. No menus, no way. So you can exploit a lot of the power of these tools. So that's kind of where we're at. It's changed dramatically in the last year. So I'm going to open up the floor now to encourage both those that are teachers and those that are students. How have you used AI? What have you found that's helpful? What have you found that doesn't work as well? And if you can share a personal story of how you've used it, that's going to be really helpful. I know my colleagues here, we've got ideas of how we've used it, and I can tell you stories of how I've used it with my students. But we want to hear from all of you to begin with, to see how have you used AI, has it worked, and maybe if you haven't, maybe what questions you have about that.
I'll be happy to share, because I'm both an instructor and a student, an EDD student right now. So on the instructor side, I support students who are doing their student teaching. And I just this week started using Magic School. They have a teacher observation component in there where I can type in things that I saw the student do well, things the student should work on, just like a bulleted list. And it generates this beautiful, thank you for welcoming me into your classroom. Remember to do this. And so it's saving me the time of having to, before I would type all of that, everything, your behavior management was it's saving me so much time. So I see a couple of my peeps on here. I'm happy to show you all how I use that. Anybody who wants to see how I use that. And then on the student side, I've been using ChatGPT some just to help me when it gets to wordsmithing. I love to have it rewrite for me and then compare what I've written to what they come up with, or what it comes up with, to kind of see which words or phrases I might want to rework.
Jessica, kind of a follow-up question. I love that. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Magic School, and we can put that link in the chat. That is a complete system that uses artificial intelligence. It uses the engine. I believe it's ChatGPT is the engine. And it has all kinds of scenarios of lesson planning, of writing emails, like Jessica pointed out, of doing student reviews of student teachers. It's kind of a suite of the common things that teachers need to do, all built within a closed system that you can literally do that. You can put in those bullet points. It'll write the letter. It'll do the newsletter. Obviously, it's using all the input from you. Jessica, I want to go back to something you said. It saves me time of having to write that up. How do you use that time with the student teachers? I mean, what kinds of things can you do with student teachers that you couldn't do before when you were spending all the time writing up the report, if you will?
Well, I feel like I'm able to have more time to think about the lesson and what I really want to say to them, because I'm not spending the time typing it out. And I think that it is helping me in that capacity. It's giving me more time to spend viewing the lessons and thinking about the lessons. And then I just also wanted to mention that the Magic School AI site, I just recently pulled it up. It's got some fabulous things in there that I think all of us as instructors could use. I saw something in there that it'll generate questions on YouTube videos for you. What a cool thing if you want to show your students a video, you could have it generate the questions and then decide, kind of do that backwards work of, this is really cool, I like these questions, or no, I just really see so many components in here. I am extremely excited about the professional email generator, because that's an area where a lot of my students really struggle. That I get a lot of emails that are like, hey, professor. No. So I'm very excited about the tools that are here.
Thank you for sharing that, Jessica. Wonderful. And I like the perspective of you as a student using AI, and also as a professional using that with the pre-service teachers and evaluating them. Wonderful. Other uses, other ideas, other questions. If you haven't dipped your toe in using generative AI yet, as a student or a teacher, what questions do you have? You've got a great panel here that can really delve into this and a variety of resources. So what questions do you have about it?
In what ways have any of you used it to help you search the literature? Number one thing is search the literature. Number two, use it to help you, and I think Jessica already alluded to this a bit, but have students use it to work on their writing and that kind of thing. Those are two interests that I have.
I can jump in real quick, Ray. I have just recently discovered Rabbit AI, and I am by far not the expert on it. And I'd love someone in this Zoom room who might be an expert or an emerging expert. I'd love to sit for a tutorial, but I've started to use it with my qual students. And using, you could use Zotero as a plugin. That's how I use it. However, just kind of putting in a citation and letting Rabbit AI pull up similar authors. And you can also, there's also a function in Rabbit AI where you can go kind of go down the rabbit hole when searching literature by an author. What I like about it is it gives you a visual. And so the larger the bubbles, the more literature that Rabbit AI is offering. And it comes from real journals and not the hallucinations that Jim was talking about. So yeah, I'm just learning. And I've introduced it to my current 713. I've also advised them to go to their LSC chair and talk to them about their comfort levels when using AI. So that's where I am with that.
Thank you for that, Lindsay. I noticed that Punya put in the chat a list of AI-based research tools. It is a fabulous list. It's probably more than you can contain right now, but the Research Rabbit is on that list. So is Magic School, I believe. That's a great list to look at. And I think, Ray, it's a great question in terms of how students can use that. One of the things that I did with my students this semester is they're early in their research, and they're taking their problem of practice, and they don't know a lot about educational theories yet. They're still learning that in the program. I wrote a fairly elaborate script that I tested pretty carefully, and I gave my students the script. I made an AI web page in my Canvas course, and I said, take this script and put it into ChatGPT, and it doesn't give them answers. It requires them to put in their problem of practice. It requires them to give context. And then it says, okay, I'm going to generate some educational theories. See if you see anything here that kind of maps to your problem of practice. They then pick one, and then then it'll prompt them to ask more questions about, do you want to learn more about this? And I did a little survey of my students, and I only had a response of maybe 5 or 6. Every single one of them said, that was incredible. It got me started and engaging in the ChatGPT in a conversation. Doesn't give answers, it starts the conversation. And so I'm going to try to do more of that. I'm just giving them the prompt, and it really steps them through, but it doesn't do anything for them. It requires them to put all their information in as it goes. And I want to do more of that with my students to help them uncover which educational theories are aligned best with their problems of practice. That's one example. Others?
Hi, guys. This is Teresa. I can share something really quick. Ray, you might appreciate this one. I had a student who was he ended his dissertation very abruptly without a very good conclusion. And I was working asynchronously and not live with him. So I wanted to be able to share something very direct in terms of how to teach him how to write a conclusion. So I went into ChatGPT and I started playing with some ways to assist. Anyway, what I ended up with in my final prompt was a sentence structure that might support a well-written conclusion of a dissertation. And ChatGPT actually put sentences in place with brackets where content could be added. And I'm actually just was reading his final conclusion, and it's pretty darn good. So in other words, I used it as a teaching tool to help me craft a message that would be easy for him to understand and a pathway for him to get to success a lot quicker than I think I could have done in a face-to-face environment even.
Thank you, Teresa.
Yeah.
Maricel, did you have your hand up? I thought I saw that earlier.
I did. Thank you so much. So my name is Maricel Lawrence, and I am a student in the EDD program. And I mentioned in the chat that I have used lit maps when I was doing my lit review for my work. And it's been really fascinating to see the connection between the articles that I had already collected, right? So I didn't have lit maps when I got started with my lit review. So I had a big collection of everything that I was reading. So I was able to move that long list of articles into lit maps. And then it gave me a great map of what I had already collected, the authors that I was really reading about. And then it gave me a lot of other authors to review and potential new areas to explore. So that was very helpful for me when I was doing the lit review. Elicit was also another tool that was very helpful when I was building or working on my research questions and making sure that I was asking the right questions. So that was a great practice. In the writing side, I would say Grammarly has always been a tool that I have used for many years. And I think it's my lifesaver when it comes to passive and active voice. So it keeps telling me, you're writing in passive voice. So I love that. And, being able to come in and change that has been really very helpful.
Thank you, Maricel. And thank you for mentioning Grammarly. I think we kind of take it for granted. Grammarly is using AI as many of the tools, and we would never tell a student, don't use Grammarly, right? So thank you for that. The product Elicit that she talked about is on our list that Punya put out there. I don't know if Litmaps is. I'm trying to think. I think it is, but I'm not sure. If it's not, we'll add that. I think in the research process, we're going to find the process of finding gaps in the literature and finding literature with products like Scopus AI or Elicit and some others really opens up this opportunity to really do a very comprehensive lit review, more than you could have done before. I think Maricel is kind of a good example of what that looks like. We've got lit maps now in the chat. I'm loving these stories. I'd rather hear the stories from students and faculty that are using it. Let's keep going. I'm loving it.
Hi,
Yep.
I'm Ying. Yeah, so I'm Ying. I'm just graduated from ASU last semester. So I use
Congratulations.
thank you. I'm in the job market right now. So I use ChatGPT to analyze my dissertation data. Or actually, it's vice versa. I already graduated, and then I use my coded dissertation data to train ChatGPT model to help me automatically analyze the conversation based on ACAP framework. And right now we submit that test to the conference. So the next move, we want to develop manuscript, and also the next project, we want to move more open-end data. For example, student essay. We want to train the ChatGPT to be able to analyze the open conversation based on the rubric. And then, but because right now I teach at ASU as well, so what I see is that students only have one shot. But this is the problem statement, right? Students only have one shot of their assignment, and I cannot really provide formative feedback to students because I have 30 students in my session. So the thing is that I only can give them one shot of feedback. So I think it would be better if I can train the ChatGPT to be able to provide formative feedback so that it reduces my work first. And the second is that students have one more shot before I give them the human grade assignment. So in that kind of sense, they can use the ChatGPT feedback to improve their writing and resubmit again. And then I use my human grade to grade them. So basically they have more chance to learn from AI and also from human. That is how I think we can use ChatGPT for analysis and revelate our feedback and teaching.
Can I ask a quick question here? So when you say that you trained ChatGPT, what do you mean by that?
So I work with my colleague, so he's a software engineer. So I just put the education framework for him, and then we create the three test scenario. First one, we use ChatGPT 3.5, which is we can train on that one. And another one, ChatGPT 4. They don't have the open API yet, so we cannot train ChatGPT 4. We can only train ChatGPT 3.5. And the way he trained, not I train, the way he trained is that he changed parameter. Rafael, can you talk about your training method?
We are live. This is good.
This is my husband, actually. Rafael.
So for those who don't understand what that means, I'll give a little bit of context. So the ChatGPT interface that we use, where we just type in the words and it responds, there is a back end, which is what is their application that you can actually go in and train the model in a different way. That's called the API. That actually costs you some microcents every time you use it. So you have to have, that's a different GPT account that you need in order to go in the back end and do that kind of coding. So I'll talk a little bit more about that after you tell us how you actually did the training of the model.
Yeah, so explore two ways of training a model, right? One is doing prompt engineering, which is using the UI and just giving some examples through the UI. And the other is really fine-tuning the model through the API. But the only caveat to that is that for the API, we only have access to GPT 3.5, not 4 yet. They haven't released the version.
So that's a little more advanced use of ChatGPT. The other thing that I think it's very important to mention here is that one of our graduates of our program, of the LLT program, Melissa Warr, who's now a faculty member at New Mexico State, has actually been doing some studies on how even with the backend API, you can get relatively biased results based on certain tags and other things that the API will recognize. So I think it's really powerful that what this can do, but I think we also need to be incredibly careful. So for instance, even very simply, if in a student the student writes something like, I like to listen to rap music while writing, or somebody else says, I like to listen to classical music, ChatGPT will give different feedback. It will make assumptions about the race of the student and will give different feedback. So these are the kinds of things that we need to be very sensitive to. So even things like lit maps and so on, even though they claim that they are going to be always accurate, it is not guaranteed. So that these models, they hallucinate because it is in their nature to hallucinate. And so these companies are trying to build guardrails, trying to build ways of preventing this hallucination from happening. And it'll get better over time, for sure. But I think it's incredibly important that we always double check. So for instance, if you're doing qualitative analysis, if you can go back and listen to the episode of Just an Hour, where we had a group of our faculty and doctoral students who've been using this qualitative research software called AI Lies, what they find is that sometimes AI Lies will actually identify themes that they had not caught. But there are other times where it will not identify themes that they was obvious to the human coders, right? So in that case, not completely implicitly trusting the output of the AI, I think is incredibly important. So I think that's a lesson that we should all take. Melissa and I have often talked about if we could get access to, what was the first one that was mentioned? The Magic School AI, or to Khan Migo, and to be able to run some experiments on them, because they are based upon ChatGPT architecture. So we are concerned that there might be implicit biases in those systems as well, but they won't give us access to it because they don't want people to find out what's going on there. But I think that's an important thing to realize, that this does give us incredible powers, but at the same time that we have to trust and verify, not trust, but we have to verify that these results are indeed consistent, that they are not biased or other way confabulating in some way. So I think that's an important thing for us to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Punya. Yeah. I want to emphasize a couple of things. We got into some AI speak there in terms of APIs and backends and those kinds of things. I want to clarify that there are tools that are being built that are much more geared towards products that people can use in research and writing, that are designed by companies and sold, if you will, or subscribed. But you can do a lot with just prompting. So for example, if you're a teacher, and I love that Ying was talking about formative assessment, you can take your rubric, what you're expecting a student to do, and you can design a prompt that you could give to the students, and it will go and look to see if their submission meets all the requirement of that assignment before they turn it in. And it might flag that and say, you're missing the research questions. You haven't described the theory inadequately. That can be done. I'm experimenting right now with some of my assignments to see what can be done. You can write a prompt that will actually do that, and the students could use that as a way of checking their work before it came in. I asked a graduate student, what are some examples of prompts that they are using with ChatGPT? Let me give you just a small sampling, then I want to go back to the form here. So for prompts for using ChatGPT on complex tests, you might say, share 5 ways that a researcher might apply this text. Explain what a theorist would think about this text. Explain this concept based on the text that I gave you. I understood the concept to mean this. Would the author agree with this concept, with my definition of that? Prompts on writing. Here's an outline of a draft. Please provide feedback on my organization, sentence structure, and fluency. Do not rewrite it. What would the theorist think about this draft? Do not rewrite it. These are some examples that you engage with ChatGPT in a conversation about the work that you're doing. And that can be a very rich response that you can get. And then you're iterating and working on that before you turn an assignment in. Those are just some examples. Other thoughts about research. I don't know, Ray, if we answered all of your questions or not on that, but I think we did. There's some great links in the chat as well.
So two quick things that I can add. So one is those of you who are interested in qualitative analysis, we have sort of a quote unquote partnership with the AI Lies people. So feel free to reach out to me and I can make the connection with them, and we can see how we can sort of help that line of work. Sorry, my dog saw somebody. I don't know if you can hear him barking. The second now see, my dog made me forget my chain of thought. It'll come back. Oh, yes, and now I remember. One of the things that we actually used a couple of AI tools was for sort of theory development. And so we have a framework around the use of design in education. And we were using the word culture in two kind of different ways. And then we had been sort of struggling with it. And we actually went and uploaded the model and we said, this is the model and we are using culture in different ways. What are some ways that you can that we can think about to adapt the model? And it gave us some really good possibilities. Again, thinking of it in terms of possibilities rather than answers is a really powerful way of thinking about it. We didn't have to accept what it threw at us, but it did allow us to engage, at least internally. This is, again, Melissa and Kevin Close, also a graduate of our program now in the Spencer Foundation, and me to sit and think about, oh, these are some ways that we can address this concern that we have. So I think and Ron Bagetto, if he was here, would really lean into the whole possibility thinking bit, which I think is an important aspect of this work, of these tools.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Punya has written extensively on how hallucination can actually be a creativity advantage and some idea generation. So we don't always think of that, but and maybe we can throw his blog in there somewhere about how a hallucination can actually be helpful. But hopefully you've seen some examples here that if you're engaging with the ChatGPT to find out if your writing is doing what you think it can be criticized and critiqued. It's really powerful in terms of that. You can use it, students can use it as a study guide. It can generate some questions for me. Here's my dissertation questions. What are some questions that I might get asked in my dissertation defense? Almost anything. You can think of it as a mentor, as a most knowledgeable other, as an editor. And when you start to use that, I think the students would probably agree here that can be a very powerful tool and does tie into formative assessment. You're doing your own formative assessment. You're checking yourself. Wonderful. Any other ideas or uses that you want to share with the group here? For those that haven't used it much, and maybe at this point you're feeling a little bit like maybe either intimidated or maybe confused, I really want to hear from those that want to dip their toe in, but they're not sure. And if this is a great opportunity, we've got a collection of people here from students and teachers that we can maybe give you some advice or some ways to begin or to start that you can feel comfortable if you feel like that's what you want to do. Anyone that wants to share that place?
Yeah, I do. This is Lou Albert. And I've been dipping my toe in with help from my daughter and others who are using it while teaching. She's at the University of Colorado at Boulder, teaching writing and rhetoric. And her first experience was almost 18 out of her 20 students used it to write. And she had that kind of analysis done by these various tools and 2 or 3 of them wrote their whole paper that way. All that said, in my dipping my toe into it, I'm learning things about what's going on in the world, about where I can find white pelicans and Chandler. And so I'm past that point. But I'm just listening to this. If you were giving advice to somebody that wants to do more than dip their toe in, that's me, what would you say? What are the first things you would suggest that we do just to let this feel a lot more comfortable than it still does? For example, in writing prompts, I'm still asking questions that are too short. But all that said, any advice you would have along those lines? I'm sure I'm not alone, but where we might start off.
Anyone have any advice? I've got some ideas, but I'm going to hold those ideas. Anyone have advice for Lewis?
I think a lot of what we've done is play with it. I know that sounds like a weird way to go about it, but it is a lot of just getting in there and playing with it. I know as far as like prompt engineering and those type of things, really one of the pieces that really helped me kind of understand the tool more was actually the generative AI course that is open for ASU. It's the one that Learning Experience created. I can put it into the chat here, but that one actually really helped. And it has a bunch of different levels. So it has like beginner level in there if you've never looked at any of it. And then if you're like yourself who's done, you know, some things in it, then it gets you started at that level. And then even if you're more advanced, it gives you some deeper explanations as well.
Yeah, I would echo what Jennifer says. The AI course that ASU has is good. In terms of prompt engineering, the best helper with a good prompt is ChatGPT. So I will put a prompt in and say, here's my prompt, what I'm looking for. I give it to ChatGPT and say, how can you improve this? And ChatGPT will come back with a very good prompt and then use it and test it and see what it looks like. So ChatGPT can really help you with prompts by just asking it, here's the prompt I want to do. How do you make this better? And it's really helpful in that. Other suggestions for Louis?
Yeah, Louis, this is Teresa again. One thing that I do in my mind as I'm playing with it is I think about what it's going to need to know before it responds to me. And I imagine a box, like literally a cube. And those are like the edges for me of the creative process. So within the box, I want it to think. Okay, so then what I have to do is define what's inside or outside of the box. So the who, what, where, when, you know, all the circumstances it needs to know in order to be creative with me. And that takes a little bit of brainstorming and maybe a pile of sticky lists before you get started with it. And then the other thing I tried yesterday, I was trying to design some feedback for students as I was grading. And I started realizing that once I got too far down the road with refining it, sometimes I just needed to start over with it. And so literally starting a new conversation was really helpful once I had a better idea of how that prompt needed to be shaped. So the other thing I did was I had a Word doc going on the side with my prompt. And I kept kind of playing with the prompt. And actually the prompt was related to giving the students feedback. So I crafted almost a paragraph of a prompt. And then I fed in a part of the assignment and asked it to give me some general feedback or opinion with personalized information embedded into it. I asked it to write at a 10th grade level because 6th grade was too low, saying nothing was too high, and it gave all these adjectives that I thought was a little too fluffy. So anyway, it was just an interesting sort of artistic, creative mode that I had to get in with it. But in the end, I had a really good prompt that I could use over and over again.
Thank you. That's particularly helpful. I've been doing that. And every time I ask it a different version of the same prompt or question, it's not like it's been written by anybody else except the artificial intelligence that's creating it. I've not yet gotten to a point where I think I want to use it, but I have been. That's a very good suggestion. I'm going to try what you just suggested and see what that teaches me.
You know, a really good way to do it, I like to give feedback to students with a little paragraph at the end or a sentence at the end that's forward thinking. So I took the next assignment to add to students' feedback as I was grading last night. I fed the assignment directions into ChatGPT and I wanted it to write me no more than 3 sentences, 10th grade level, you know, whatever. Some couple of things to consider as they were thinking on the next project. And it was a really good activity for me to play with. You might try something like that.
Another thing that I've tried when mine gets stuck, because sometimes you'll get the same answers and it won't give you the version that you want, even as you're playing with it. I send it to someone else and say, hey, throw this into yours and think about it. And Jen and I do it all the time. I'm like, okay, I'm getting this. I want something different. So sometimes it helps to send it off to someone else or, you know, phone a friend and say, hey, what are you thinking about this? I always say also start off small, find something that you're interested in that's not the assignment that's going to open next week. Maybe it's the one 2 weeks from now. So you have a little bit more time to play around with it, but also spend some time playing. At the same time, I search the web sometimes and look for, prompting engineers for teachers, or higher ed, to see other ways that other people are phrasing it that I possibly can use. So I like to phone a friend, and I know that there's other folks here. Steve Salik's one of the ones I love to send things to, because he and I think on the same, but yet very differently. So I like to ask him, how would you phrase this? What would you say? How would you think about this, to see if the response is a little bit different? So again, playing around with it is the key, and give yourself time and space to play with it and find out what strategy works best for you.
Mhm.
And you can always come to the LFC on Fridays, and we'd be more than happy to play around with your assignment.
Absolutely. The other thing, to that point as well, Janelle and I have also found in kind of that back and forth, is that the way that my ChatGPT answers is very different from the way hers answers. So I am a lot of with my systems and kind of the bullet lists that I do quite often, mine answers quite often in that format, where hers is more narrative. So that kind of does help a little bit to see that. And again, you find that difference also is that if you go to different LLMs. So Jim talked about, Gemini and Copilot. There's also Bing Chat and Perplexity and ChatGPT, of course, being the big one that everybody kind of hears about. But the other ones are definitely out there and able to be used as well.
Just want to throw out for Perplexity, if you're looking to find the resources quickly, like say you want to know where things are coming from and you want to be able to go back in and search where they're coming from and possibly get more information from the source itself, Perplexity lists all of the sources that it pulls the information from right at the top. I know ChatGPT is now getting to that point, but Perplexity, it's very simple, very easy. Perplexity also, as you're playing around with both, I have both open all the time. So as I'm working with one, I'll put it into ChatGPT and I'm like, I don't like that answer. So then I'll put it into Perplexity to see what it'll give me. 2 completely different answers and 2 completely different styles. Perplexity also, just not to promote them, I just like the way it kind of gives back information. It gives you, so if you ask it a question, it answers the question, but then it gives you 3 other possible ways of thinking about that information. And that's really helpful, especially when you're like, I'm not sure exactly what I want or what I'm looking for. Getting those 3 other suggestions have really helped me dig a little bit deeper into certain topics. So just a couple of things to throw out with you or at you.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning Perplexity. If you've never tried Perplexity AI, give it a shot. It's really quite powerful. I want to acknowledge that Abdullah put in the chat a really important piece. He says, I explained to the AI how I'd explain what I would like to explain it in the sense of a 3-year-old. You can ask ChatGPT to give it to you in any grade level. I try it as simply and clear as possible. I keep the conversing with the AI, elaborating on what I want. The key is to elaborate on the conversation. And the other thing I would say, Louis, on the prompts, I'm going to do a super quick screen share and then jump right back. This is the prompt that I gave to my students to generate educational theory ideas. You can see this is the entire prompt. I give it to my students. They paste it in. It's like a story. It tells the AI what I want you to do, who you are, what's the context. After the student has provided this information, wait, ask them to give you this information. That prompt has produced incredible amounts of interaction with the students. And you can see it's very long. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, check out the Ethan Mollick Substack. He's a professor at the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania. He will show you how to do some prompts, and he'll show you some prompts there that will be really interesting. A wonderful Substack to check out, Ethan Mollick. We have about 7 minutes left. Thank you for that question, Louis. I really appreciate you asking that. Yes, Jessica, I will send you that prompt. Oh, sorry, that was a direct message. She said, that looks pretty cool. I want to try that.
That's okay. Thank you.
I outed you.
Try it. And I know some of my classmates would as well, just to see.
You got it.
Because that's what we're working on. So thank you. Oh, someone
Oh,
else.
beautiful.
Well,
Jim,
maybe you had it copied. Just throw it in the chat and we'll copy it.
Jim,
What's that?
I'm I'm working right now with students on theory, so would you send that one to me, please?
Yeah, okay, Jessica and Ray.
I promised the students that I'd give them all some input on what theories might be good for them. And not that I'm trying to get out of that, but I think this is a much more.
Yeah, and you could be a good judge to add to the prompt to make sure that it's getting the right, it's dialing it in. So thank you. I'll send that out.
Thank you.
We've got about 6 minutes left. I really want to make sure that all voices are heard. If there's something that's burning and you really want to know, or you want to say, you know what, I'm not ready for this stuff. I think it's not ready. We want to hear that. We want to hear that.
Keep in mind also, we're going to repeat this session next Tuesday at 8 a.m. So if you're not feeling like you're ready to share, if you want to come back again at 8 a.m. next week, we'll talk about the same topic.
Thank you for that, Janelle. And then the tools topic, I think we'll really roll up the sleeves on the tools. It's like we're chomping. We don't want to do it. We try not to do that. But anything else we haven't covered that you're kind of, thank you for the Ethan Mollick. I'm kind of a big Ethan Mollick fan. I'm sorry.
I guess one thing that I also think about, I'm working on a quantitative reasoning piece for a GenAI course. It's the entry-level technology course. And I've noticed that every semester, like last semester, I added some things. The semester before that, I added some other things. So it's like each semester, I'm adding a little bit more in terms of AI. And the speed that things are changing, I'm finding that I'm changing everything each semester. So all the assignments have to be reworked a little bit. With quantitative reasoning, we're adding in, showing them how to build their charts and their tables. But I know that by the time we finish that unit, there's going to be all these AI tools out there that are going to develop charts and tables for them. So it just seems like if you're feeling like that as well, where you're like, okay, is there things moving too fast? I think that's the thing that I feel more and more, and thinking about just the research side. I'm doing a qualitative study, and I talk to Punya, Jen, and Jim all the time, and I'm like, okay, wait, what can we use for this? What can we use for that? So keep in mind those sounding boards. And know that, no, you're not going to be able to stay caught up all the time, but you just kind of got to move with it. So if you add something in, it may be something you're going to refine or you're going to change, but it's very interesting to watch what students do with the tools and how they're using the different tools and what they're able to generate with them.
Yeah, and I appreciate the students sharing. There's some vulnerability with that, right? Your students that are sharing, here's what I'm doing. I think being very open and transparent from the students and the professors is going to be really important. I guess a message for faculty would be, you should assume that students are probably trying some of these tools, not in a way to circumvent the system or to cheat or to plagiarize, but if you've got tools that can do these powerful things, the students are going to try them and they're going to explore them. And I think from a faculty perspective, and we're going to delve into this in one of the sessions coming up, how can you look at your own course and say, okay, here's what I'm asking my students to do. Is this still relevant in a world of AI where there might be some tools where they can really expand their learning beyond what you're asking them to do? I'm looking very, very critically at those types of things in my own courses and say, what can I give my students tools that they can help expand their thinking and move them along. So we've got 2 minutes left. Anyone else with any final comments?
Thank you all. Appreciate it very much.
Here's the schedule coming up. I'll put that up of the different, I think if you signed up for this one, I think you signed up for all of them, I believe, within Outlook. So thank you everybody for coming. It was really thrilling to see all of the comments and contributions. We really greatly appreciate it.